Encompass Communications and Learning is a full-service training and communications agency dedicated to helping life science teams enhance their knowledge and skills. The thoughts expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and not necessarily views of Encompass.
Welcome to Encompass Insider. I'm Jen Lally, Senior Director of Business Development and Marketing here at Encompass Communications and Learning. And today I'm super happy because our guest is Dr. Kelly Tanner, an industry educator in leadership and certified executive coach, also a good friend of mine. She's had over 25 years of experience partnering with individuals and organizations on how to demonstrate leadership and also helping organizations strengthen their teams and relationships. And she's really here with us today to share her top 5 tips for effective leadership. So Kelly, thanks for taking the time to speak to us.
Jen, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
So Kelly, let's get started. It's so nice to reconnect, by the way. As I said, as we've worked together in the past, we're also good friends. And now you're an industry educator in leadership and a certified executive coach doing big things. Maybe you could tell our audience a little bit more about your background.
Sure. Thanks, Jen. I've spent more than 25 years as an industry educator in leadership and also earned my doctoral degree in business and organizational leadership. And I've spent a lot of my career helping teams of any size create sustainable systems for personal and professional accountability. And that's around increasing ownership and synergy within the organization. And from these experiences, I've really learned that we are all truly leaders. And people look to us to be those leaders because leadership is truly about influence, and we can help set that example in our day-to-day work.
That's so impressive. And I'm sure this topic will be relevant for really anyone listening today. I'm personally excited to learn more. And I imagine that each of us can demonstrate leadership in our day-to-day, no matter what role that we're in within an organization. So tell us, where do we start?
Yeah, so let's get started. Today I want to cover 5 key tips for effective leadership that I've learned in my own professional career and in partnering with clients I work with. The 5 tips are communication, delegation, staying connected, being open to new ideas, and also being a mentor.
As I mentioned, I'm sure any of these topics resonate differently with anyone listening today. So again, no matter what role they're in. So tell us more. Let's start with communication, which is the first thing you mentioned. What do you think is the most important for leaders to consider when it comes to communication?
Communication is key, Jen, and no matter what role you're in, no matter what kind of team member you are, no matter what size of team you're in, we all have that psychological ownership within the organization, whether you're going to the YMCA, a part of that, your softball team, your gym, or your mom group. Effective communication is the next step of action that leads us to the level of commitment within our organization. And that shared commitment that we have within our organization is the glue that reinforces that connection and any organization. So really connecting is done by that communication, and it increases your influence, which I said is critical to leadership. So let's talk about virtual teams, because I know all of us have been a part of that quite a bit over the last year. In a digital landscape, how does this change things over communication? Well, our actions are vitally important as we have to follow through because these interactions that we're having with people may be limited. And in his book, John Maxwell says, and his book is called Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. He says that what we are feeling and attitude, we have to be really clear on what we're communicating within that feeling and attitude. So what we say accounts for only 7% of what is believed by people. The way we say it accounts for 39%. What others see accounts for 55%. And so what that means is that more than 90% of the impressions we convey has nothing to do with what we're actually saying. That's wild, isn't it? So
That's incredible, Kelly.
I know.
Come on.
I know. And so with this limited personal interaction, it's hard. It's hard to make sure that what you say is what you mean and what you're meaning is what you're saying. So how do we get to the point of our better communication. Well, I've learned that communication has three essential parts. The first one is our thoughts, something we know to share that and also to learn that among our team members. The second one is emotion, sharing something that we feel or getting that essence of what someone else feels. And then the third is taking action on what we're hearing, what we're supposed to do, whether it's for ourselves, for the organization, or for that individual as well. So you may be thinking, okay, how do I do this? So when I consult with organizations, I recommend actively engaging with team members and constructing how their contributions can shape the organization. So this activity, what it does is it ensures that the original why and the what of that person is served with them intrinsically, and it helps the managers and leaders intentionally mentor and begin succession planning while building that trust within the organization. So we got a lot of things going on here, but it starts with having that conversation about the why and the what with that person. And an example of how I've done this too is I've used the DISC assessment. Some of you all may be very familiar with it. And the DISC assessment, one of the attributes of it is it helps teams analyze communication preferences. It's pretty cool. And it drills down into the preferred communication and can be vitally important when transferred into a virtual environment. John Maxwell, I'm a certified John Maxwell consultant and coach, so he's kind of my jam. So John Maxwell says also, it's not enough to just work hard. It's not enough to just do a great job and be successful. You have to learn how to communicate with others, because connecting is the ability to identify and relate to people in a way that increases your influence. Again, influence. And I think it's also about consistency of that communication as well. So what we're hearing again, Jen, is that leadership is about influence and increasing that influence in every single situation. And where it begins is understanding perspective about how decisions are being made within that person and that organization, and seeking to understand how the company or organization got to that point. Because before I walk in as an employee, before I've asked them to say, do you know? Do you want to know what I know? Do you want to know? Okay.
Absolutely.
No, they don't want to know all of what I know. They're thinking, what do you know? Because I think that if you act like you're engaging in the understanding of that perspective and that context of how those decisions are made, you or we are demonstrating that we're truly intrinsically valuing and have that psychological ownership of that organization.
There's a lot you said that really struck me, Kelly, and specifically, seeking to understand, perspective, right? And I have to say, certainly the forced adjustment, let's call it, that happened when we became, as a country and in our day to day, much more virtual than we've ever been. And it's forced an adjustment. It forced us to adapt. And I think you touched on that a little bit. How we communicate and what we do and the way in which we do it is even more critical now than ever. So, you talked about communication. And I'd love to have you tell us about your next tip, because I have to admit, delegation, this one resonates a lot with me personally and professionally. And I have learned through my career how to delegate over time, right? It wasn't
Yeah.
something that came very naturally. You probably know that from our work
Yeah.
together in the past. So tell me, do you have any advice for us on how and when we can delegate?
Yes, thank you. This is one that sort of makes me laugh, because we all think that we're doing such a great job, but then we sort of reach our internal capacity and we don't realize it because it comes out in other things like stress, or you snap at somebody. And really, when you think you're being effective because you're doing everything yourself because you can't trust anybody else to do it, you're not being effective. We can't do everything, and you can't think that you're being effective. So what's critical is to pick up on those nuances by understanding yourself and learning when and what to delegate. And also, of course, like you're saying, Jen, when to ask others for help, whether it be your admin assistant, your colleague, your manager. It helps to develop a sense of ownership that I was talking about before. Because when you ask someone else to help you, you're not saying, I'm weak. I can't do this. You're saying, I trust you. That's the voice that they're hearing. It communicates that trust, the willingness, the mutual concern that connects that person. And the reason why we're in any group that we're in is because of that mutual concern and our connection. So think about how much more it could deepen that sense of connection and trust and love and vulnerability with you as that leader if you said, hey, would you mind? I need help. And so you have to learn how to ask for help to say, what can I do? Hey, self, what can I do for myself to make my work be effective, more effective? Because I feel like I'm drowning here. What work could I teach someone else to take off of my task list? And now that I'm going to delegate that, I'm going to use my time in whatever role I'm in to be more effective, more efficient by doing the things that I'm licensed or skilled or really good at to do to make my impact on the world. So something else, Jen, that works really well with the virtual teams as it comes to this point, I've seen this done several times. Some organizations use delegation to bring the team together. They can either alternate this among their team members, or they can keep like one person designated. They'll ask sometimes or offer a position, so you're not voluntold, of an individual who can serve as that chief communicator among that virtual team in the group to help organize meetings between the groups, ensuring calendars are updated, and that those project management tools are prioritized too. Some people work with Asana, some people work with different systems, Trello boards to communicate across their organization. But a lead, someone that person trusts, but they're volunteering for it.
Absolutely. One of the things that really resonated with me was delegating is not a sign of weakness. It's, I trust you. For me personally, it took many years to understand that dynamic. And really, it's not a weakness, but actually what it really equals is a sign of leadership.
Yeah, no, I think we don't realize how much we take on ourselves and how much we're putting on ourselves and we're not shedding off, and what it is, the actuality of what it is doing when we do ask that. Because when you ask other people for help, two things will happen. You'll either get what you need, the help that you need, or realize that the person or individual that you're asking doesn't have the capacity to deliver, or they don't have the skills, but both are gifts, right?
Very good point. Yes.
You learn a lot from that interaction. And then lastly, what I've learned about delegation is that when you delegate, you're giving them an opportunity to feel more vested in your group and in your team, and that they feel that they're that integral part, because there's nothing worse than feeling like your contributions aren't being noticed, right? You show up, you do what you do every day. It's day in, day out. It's like we were talking about the other day, Groundhog Day. Every day seems the same. And
Exactly.
when someone else is delegating something, it means that they're trusting you and your skill sets with those tasks. So again, building trust within the team.
I guess another hot topic, we'll go on to your third tip, which you shared was staying connected. And I imagine now, as you mentioned before about virtual, right? Staying connected virtually now can look a little different and maybe be more magnified than it's been in the past. So
Sure.
tell us more about that. What are the tips that you can offer here?
And Jen, you've always done so well at staying connected and making sure people there are in the loop. And it's it's cool to be able to use what you know to help other people too, to mentor and to build your teams. But no matter which profession you're a part of, we're all in this world. I think that no matter what our profession is, we are all working to help people. And you've got to connect with people in your profession. And that staying connected is having their relationship intentionally so that others can rely on you so they can grow, and you rely on them to grow. And then you both end up having this growth mindset, because that growth mindset is what helps you and them grow professionally. Again, it's about that trust. And that connection at its core, whether it's through Facebook, some of us only connect through Facebook or LinkedIn
Yeah,
or through our,
LinkedIn's a big one for me. Yep.
yep, LinkedIn is too for me. And even your professional organizations inside and outside of work, whatever type of group that you're in, you're there to help, aren't you? That's why you're there. You want to help people, you want to grow, you want to learn. And that connection helps them to trust you. And then also what they're wondering is how you can help them too. You're on LinkedIn because you might learn something. I'm on LinkedIn because I might learn something. Learning is my love language.
Mhm,
so
absolutely.
so when people talk to you, they only know what they see of you, especially if it's a static profile on LinkedIn or Facebook. And so they try to create their understanding of you through their perspective. And people begin to think, how do I get to be like them? How do I get to be where Jen is? How do I get to be where Kelly is? What did they do? What did their path look like? And then so what they do is they're seeking that connection to connect intellectually. And then they feel that they want to they identify themselves in you, if that makes sense. And then
Yeah.
so they're seeing something in you that they want to emulate. So it has to be that person that says, you know what, I really want to know what Jen's doing, or I really want to know what Sally is doing, to see how they got to where they were. And then for the other person to reach out and grab them, because we have to connect to grow, because our common ground in this life is that we have to leverage and grow our influences by serving others, and we have to build on that as our human potential in this world,
Hmm.
because that relationship that we build, or those relationships that we build, spawn that mutual respect and being able to know what goes on, and because you are connected with them, and because it's innately who we are. We're built for connection, and it's about serving people first, and then how can we help that other person. So it's like, hey Jen, do you need help with that? How can I support you? And when you ask
Mhm.
that question, people are like, nobody's ever asked me that before. Have you ever been in that situation?
Yes, I have. And see, it's also recognizing that you don't know all of the answers, right?
Yeah.
That's key.
And then would you agree that in those times where you've connected people like that, that they lead to a lifetime connection sometimes?
Absolutely. And I've seen it evolved, right? It's just an initial connection breeds further connection. I've seen that as well, which has been nice to see.
Yeah, and I think it's been amplified during the time that we're virtual. And so really, to end this point out, it's about forming those relationships that you would have otherwise had never had the opportunity to have, because you reached out, you connected with someone, and you were able to help them.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here's my golden question for you. I tell you, I have no time for this. I'm so busy. I'm managing the pandemic, my work, my children, right? Or all the other things people have in their lives, right? Is
Uh-huh.
there anything you've done that's been an intentional step to stay connected? For example, every Saturday carving out 30 minutes, right, to stay connected. Is there anything you do that's an intentional step, or tips you'd offer our audience around that?
Absolutely. I do have regular meetings set up. I have a few mastermind groups that I'm a part of, and I live in Virginia, and I connect with my folks who are out in Oregon on the West Coast. We have intentional time set up every month to say, "Hey, what's going on?" And we're connecting through this mastermind thread all the time on the medium that we're using, and it's, "Hey, what about this? Is it this course topic or this course topic? Which one should I use?" And we're getting input all the time and being vulnerable to say, that didn't work. But to breed that vulnerability in that on both sides. Because Jen, if I said, Jen, how do I help? It would take you saying either, I'm good, I don't need help, I still can't connect, or, how could you help? Because that could be one of two responses that you could offer.
Mhm. Absolutely. So what I take away from that is ask, number one, and have a plan basically around, carving out time, right? To really focus on staying connected with others. And so I know your number 4 tip is being open to new ideas. Tell me, how can leaders show and demonstrate that they're open to new ideas just in their day to day?
I think anyone that I would want to work with, be alongside of, and want to step up to being into their role would be a person who's open to new ideas. Because I think to be a leader, we ourselves have to remain open and empathetic to other people's perspectives. So, how do we do that if we never open ourselves up? We have this thing in life where we're lifelong learners, but it doesn't work if we're lifelong knowers. Okay, we're lifelong learners, not knowers. We
Oh,
have
that's a
to
good one. I'm writing that one down.
so we have to demonstrate our openness to learn and grow. Have you ever had that boss, Jen, where you felt like you could come to them with anything and you could be like, here's blue sky thinking. What do you think? And they'd be like, oh, yeah, okay. That's cool. Don't know if that would work right now. I like this, and this, but you felt like at least you could come to them and
Absolutely.
you could get that what just to bounce some thoughts off of it. And that lent to your growth as a
Absolutely.
person in that organization. But then conversely, have you had that boss where you couldn't do that with?
hmm I certainly have.
I'm sure none of us have had that. It's just unique to you and I here. But wouldn't you agree, Jen, that being in this pandemic has forced us to think or unthink what we thought we always knew? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically my full day is that. But
Everything we
it's
do.
important, right? Because ultimately it's a sign of acknowledging the current state, right? Being open to new ways of doing things and trying it out. And not every approach is going to work, but it's about understanding it, right? And learning from it.
Yeah, and everything that we have done within the last year or 6 months ago, we're not the same person. We've definitely had to let go of that. I've always done it this way. We've always done it this way. We've had to think about solutions and be resourceful, and that's what I appreciate about this time. So if we step back and we begin to layer the steps that we're talking about, that we're mentioning in this podcast, building ownership, communication, feeling like people can trust you to ask with vulnerability. Hey, tell me more while we're looking at this strategy. Tell me more about why in the past we've come to this decision. It's about opening perspective and learning and growing more from it because you also may learn something. And I think that these are tips that you can apply in every aspect of your life. Because if you're so closed in what you value and what you believe, and you can't open up, you're not going to grow as a person or professionally. So there's a lot of value in this to be able to influence what is right in front of you.
I couldn't agree more. That resonates a lot with me because it makes me reflect on, your next topic and your next tip, your final tip, which is mentoring. And I can't say enough how that last point resonated with me, Kelly. The importance of acknowledging when you don't know something, being open and asking for help, right? And I have had a number of mentors in my career. I've been mentored. I've also mentored others. And I've just been so fortunate to have had some of these experiences in my career in sales and business development and marketing. So tell me from your perspective about how leaders can serve as mentors, while also balancing their own professional development.
Yeah, it can seem like a lot, but I think that once you are intentional about it and people start to see that you're open, they can trust you, and your openness to help other people, it is that it's an organic process. And mentoring, I believe, is one of the most important things that as you grow and mature, is that it's important to realize that we have to pull the next person along to mentor them. There are sometimes when I'm working with people, I'm like, I always ask permission and say, can I can I make a suggestion? And they'll say, yeah. I'm like, okay, so when you're thinking about it like this, could you look at it also for like this? And they think, okay, cool. How do I do that? And they are looking at the next steps of their growth and how their perspective could change. And this could be in any setting, but what you're doing is you're sharing what you can see. It's just like our parents looked at us when we were probably growing up going, why are they doing that?
Absolutely.
And it's just like, because I think this is the best idea ever. But they
Exactly.
wanted to help you because it was a mutual benefit to you and to them if you didn't do that. So I determined, like, for instance, if I'm mentoring you, Jen, what I
Mhm.
think about is what are Jen's personal and professional goals? And then perhaps if Jen is working with me, what what are we working on? What are some upcoming projects that we're working on? And what are Jen's specific areas of interest or her strengths that fold into that? And then also tap into what are the amazing aspects of Jen that I know that drive her, and it's through that mentoring or any other learning and skill that you can take those skills and apply them to any area of your life. So you're connecting again by emotion. You're saying what drives Jen, and you're helping by saying, how can I help you? What area do you want to grow in? And how does that help? Could I delegate again, layering it on this so you can learn more about this, which would help you lean into your job every day and feel like
Mhm.
you're being challenged and trusted.
That makes a lot of sense.
So, I've been extremely involved in my state dental hygiene associations, and
Mhm.
I take those skills all the time with leading groups and consent agendas and what to prep for, and always apply them to every single meeting I lead. But it's that compilation, that layering of those experiences that bring you to where you are. And it's almost like we can't not go through that and then end up here and expect to end up here. We have to go through those experiences. And mentoring is one of the best ways to do that.
One of the questions that crossed my mind as you were speaking, because I myself will acknowledge, there's many more people that I could reach out to mentor. How do I know who the right person is? How do I go about it? Just any tips?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that finding someone who isn't exactly like you, right?
Mhm.
To reach out to them, and if it's you thinking of me to mentor, it's looking at areas that you want to develop. It could be others seeking you because they're fascinated. They want to emulate what you're doing. So they're trying to innately align their areas of growth to yours. And so ask them, what is it that you want to learn? What is it that I can help you with? And
Mhm.
it's what's important too is if you are seeking them out to learn different areas of the organization and to be intentional. So when you're busy and you have all these things going on, think about and reflect how that can grow you and maintain also the buy-in of that interaction. So if it's something that you all have agreed on that you're going to do, how intentional are you being about that? You
That's
know?
important. I think, mentioning, what's in it for them, asking those open-ended questions is important, but also understanding what's in it for you, right? As the leader on the other side. And this is not an easy thing to do when there are so many things on people's plates, but understanding bigger picture, how it could benefit you and the other in the long run, I think is very important as you mentioned.
Yeah, and in this type of relationship too, each person feels that commitment to openly share what their goals are. And, from that relationship, they can work collaboratively. So one of my mottos is every day is I ask myself, how can I help another person? I have an acronym, HOP, help one person. At the end of the day, who did I help today? Did I help one person? Or I go into days like that where it's so jam packed. I'm like, how am I going to help one person today other than doing task oriented things?
Right.
Because that can get in the way.
Oh, yes.
So it's about too that trust that you're building with the relationship and listening and learning and then leading by example. And then, they're looking to you to say, how would you react, Jim? What would you do? I'm sure people ask you that all the time. What do I do here? And then reframe it. How can I help you? What do you think the logical choices are? What do you think? What are your resources to solve this problem? I always find that I get so much more out of that mentoring relationship than they have gotten out of it just because of the bond that we built. But it's not enough to do all the things, to do all the great things, to think that you're under the title of leader. I think it's about giving. It's about showing up in the lives that we lead, and it's about our responsibility that we serve as that servant leader, and to go and to reach and help people out and understand that's what they are, that's what they want to do, help guide them. And Jen, I know that people probably reach out to you all the time and say, Jen, how did you get to what your job is so cool? I mean, how did you get to be Jen? with Encompass and be where you are. What's your response when you say that?
Through excellent coaches and mentors, honestly.
Hmm.
That's how I've gotten where I am. So, okay, Kelly, we've talked about a lot, right? And these are just practical and excellent tips, I think, for our audience. You know, top 5 tips for effective leadership. You talked to us today about communication, delegation, staying connected, being open to new ideas, and also the importance of mentoring. So, I got to tell you, as we've talked this time, I've asked myself, and I want to ask you, what is the most important one, if any?
It's definitely communication. That communication, that consistent communication, how you are communicating with influence to people, because that communication builds trust. It builds transparency. You can also transparently say, I don't know, and be vulnerable in those times too, to let people know, you don't know the answer, but you're working on it. And perhaps then they say, have we thought about this? And it's through that communication that everything grows. And that's the foundation.
Fantastic. Kelly, this has been so inspirational for me, and I'm sure for our audience. Thank you so much for your time. It was nice catching up with you personally as well, and great to hear your insights and tips for effective leadership. I feel like we could spend a whole other episode, right? Just talking about this even further and even taking questions, right? So thank you so much again and for inspiring us today. Thank you to our listeners for joining us. By the way, please be sure to visit us at encompasscnl.com/podcast to listen to recent episodes and subscribe using your favorite podcast platform. You can also access the Encompass blog on our site.
Encompass Communications and Learning helps life sciences colleagues advance their skills and knowledge. Our team includes experts who've worked in pharmaceutical and medical device sales and marketing, health insurance, medicine, and instructional design. We partner with those in life sciences to create customized communications and learning experiences that support medical advances for patients.